will we live in 2030? Which role will knowledge play for society? Who will perform and fund research? Who will decide about the priorities for research and innovation in Europe? The following 4 scenarios about the future European research area aim to open up our imagination. Which chances and challenges might lay ahead of us?
News for today. Welcome. Good morning, Europe. The ITER project belongs now 90% to the private sector. Only 3 national states remain involved in the project. The 5% flat rate results and income taxes should be introduced soon, said the Commission Speaker recently. Virtual goods sales growth is expected to make a huge jump again. Analysts talk about more than 20% within EU 31 countries. There's a new EU-Brazil-Japan orbital companies agreement for the commercial exploitation of asteroids belt mining. More than 45% of the worldwide population is consuming synthetic food. Launch of the Soylent Green brand next Monday should become a blockbuster, according to market analysts. And now, let's switch to Singapore to reporter Mary Jane.
I'm here in the Singapore office of the Swedish company Open Doors that you know well for its famous ComDev, the on-skin communication device used by many people worldwide. Last week, the 4 millionth ComDev was sold, and Open Doors started huge research work in its Singapore, Hong Kong, and Stockholm research labs to prepare the next ComDev generation. Thank you very much for giving us insight into your company, Mr. Gonzalez.
You're welcome.
The development of your company has not always been as positive as during the last 2 years. What happened to bring you back on the path of success?
I succeeded my father, who founded the company in 2006, at a time when people were enthusiastic on communication tools. Turnover flourished and the economy was booming. With the financial crisis and ever-increasing competition from rising companies, especially in Asia, we had to find new ways to maintain our market position.
Which ways did you define for your company?
We started to focus on our own strengths of downstream and market research, as well as end-user relationships. Since after 2020, we could not expect public support for R&D anymore. We had to invest internally in research.
So finally things got somehow better?
Indeed. Changes happened in people's minds, in society, and of course in companies. Just take the example of science. At the beginning of the century, a huge amount of resources devoted to it were controlled by national states, paid by tax money, and oriented towards rather academic and mostly useless research, while funding and incentives for innovation activities in companies, mainly small companies, increased until 2020 and then dropped totally.
Some people still have a very controversial view of this, and...
Of course, mainly because they stay attached to a romantic vision of science. But now companies are making a better job in this area than governments did before.
So you would value research in purely economic terms?
Absolutely. Governments couldn't invest much in research, so they rather create a friendly environment for business. And yes, research has to serve the economy. How would we otherwise keep our living standard? We constantly need to introduce new products and services into the market.
But do you think this is a sustainable model? Is there no risk that this mode of making business reaches some limits in a not-so-remote future?
All I can say is we need to trust the market.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez, for your valuable time.
At your service.
News for today. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Tackling infections, the HLY Hub's new treatment is a huge success. Finally, gender balance in EU's research careers is reached. Experts say a correlation to global competitiveness of Europe is visible. Foreign direct research investment flows to Europe higher than ever, but big differences according to sector. Olomouc Utrecht Vienna Basque Country Life Science Research Platform wins UN Global Research Grant for promising research in tissue engineering and cancer containment.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our special On Science and Science Policy. Our studio guest today is Dr. Alessandra Marchi, a professor emeritus of biotechnology at the Polytechnic of Milan and currently the main advisor to the EC Commissioner for Research, Innovation, and Grand Challenges Corporation. Professor Marchi, in Europe, research, innovation, and education are considered key preconditions for the creation of solutions for our grand challenges. However, this has not always been the case. A new sense of effective transnational cooperation gradually developed over the last 15 years, and joint actions are now more relevant than ever. How did we go from a world of national and EU programs to this new model of science being quintessentially a cross-country affair?
For instance, at the EU level, we have created much more integrated policy instruments. These combine different sources of funds, not only EU, but also national, regional, and private ones. In addition, grants, rather than focusing on specific disciplines, target the so-called grand challenges of our present time and mobilize European research expertise wherever available. For instance, recently, a group of neighboring regions in the Danube area managed to mobilize regional, national, and EU funds to tackle specific ecological issues related to the proximity with the Danube, with spectacular results. Plus, relevant results are picked up by the private sector in the regions. This is what makes Europe's research landscape unique nowadays.
Why is it that the knowledge regions in Europe can nowadays cooperate more seamlessly than before?
There has been a shift in mentality in the EU member states, which have agreed that the only way forward is to completely open up access and portability of grants. So now you can apply for grants anywhere in Europe. This boosts mobility of researchers within the areas of expertise.
That's very interesting. Can you give us examples on how intergovernmental action has contributed to tackling one of the most urgent challenges, climate change?
We have many examples in this field, though I would say that the electric car is one of the most remarkable. Various countries bundled their competences and resources and jointly funded a number of large-scale projects. At the same time, we have coordinated the efforts and established the required infrastructure. In addition, we created education programs which support this shift in transportation culture. Together, customers, manufacturers, researchers, and institutions have become strong in an expanding, internationally competitive sector, and we all should be proud of that.
Thank you, Professor Marchi. We have impressively recovered from the crisis. But don't you think, at the same time, that this focus on grand challenges is at the expense of the freedom of research?
You are raising a sensible point upon which there is some serious misunderstanding. But the focus on grand challenges and its objective to solve multidimensional problems calls for collaboration across scientific disciplines, including between the social and hard sciences, and embraces basic science and market innovation. Thus, there is enough flexibility for scientists to pursue risky and innovative research projects. So I don't see the focus on grand challenges as limiting researchers' freedom.